Someone said in the comments of my episode 2 review, Rings of Power is good, not great. Calm down. On the contrary, the Rings of Power is an abomination. Hello, my friends, and welcome to The Pondering. I am the real-life fake wizard. If this video brings you any value at all, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, where we're posting new videos nearly every day. I had an epiphany while watching the 3rd episode of Rings of Power, and I can finally summarize why it matters. Like, why it matters that people talk about it and call it out for its shortcomings. There are nearly 100 years of legacy behind Tolkien's Middle-earth books. There are almost 25 years of legacy behind the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films. These properties inspired what you'll likely think of when I say the word fantasy. Fantasy has become almost entirely synonymous with wizards and magic and knights and elves and dark forces in the woods. And that's because of Tolkien's books, and so people have attached to these mythos, and the films did a great job of bridging people into this fantasy genre. Before, you could only imagine it. Now, when you think of Gandalf, you think of Ian McKellen wearing a long white beard. Previously, it was only as far as your imagination could go based on reading the books. And sure, the films were not entirely a one-to-one copy of the books. There were plenty of changes made for the films. Lots of times, it's because of limited technology of its day. Well, the films were still made to honor the books, to do right by the books. Peter Jackson said often that these movies weren't made for him. They were made for Tolkien, the author. And that takes us to Rings of Power, which is entirely a fan fiction. And that would be okay if normal folks accepted it as a fan fiction. That's the problem. Normies and average folks who just want to watch TV are going to watch Rings of Power, and they're going to believe that this is what J.R.R. Tolkien had intended. They're going to think that the orcs had families, and Sauron and Galadriel had a star-crossed romance, and that Isildur's horse was magical and had echolocation. They're going to think that Celebrimbor was feeble and easily manipulated. They're going to think that Adar was the father of the orcs, and that the Númenóreans were a weak society of foolish men. And then they're going to pass that on to their children and to their children. It's injecting this foul, false narrative into Tolkien's legacy that does not belong. And so it comes to people like me to call out this bastardization that it is. People ask me why I care so much. Because Amazon and MGM are stepping over legacy for aggressive mediocrity. You think the future generation is going to keep going back to the well and reading the books? I doubt it. Book sales might be up, but studies keep showing us less and less people are actually reading the books they're buying. Am I saying we shouldn't have adaptations of books? No. I said the Peter Jackson films were there to honor the books, and I talk often about the Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor games. Those are very clearly fan fiction, but at least sexy Shelob lady is there for a purpose in the narrative and not there to be a key-jangling cameo like in Rings of Power. The difference is, you know you're playing the games as a what-if kind of story. Rings of Power wants you to think that this is going to end with the opening sequence of Peter Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring. Rings of Power latches onto other works like a parasite latching onto a host. Anyway, let's talk about episode 3.
If Baggins loses, we eat it whole.
Fair enough.
Here we see Elendil begs a horse to get on the ship. This is Isildur's horse, and this scene is a retread from season 1. Remember, Isildur is dead. Isildur, who is very much alive and takes the One Ring from Sauron at the Last Alliance. Isildur, who is the grandfather to Aragorn. Yeah, great fake-out show. Anyway, Elendil begs this horse to get on the ship, and the horse refuses. This is supposed to be a great king of men, by the way. The horse runs off and uses the magical powers of Script Says So echolocation to find Isildur, who has been taken prisoner by a spider. Not just any spider, that's Shelob. Yeah, that's Shelob the spider, but still a baby spider. This is about as key-jangly as putting Darth Plagueis in the Acolyte series finale. It wasn't necessary. Could have just been a regular spider. We didn't need to know that this was Shelob. And so Isildur and Magic Horse run away, only for Isildur to do a stupid and get stabbed in the leg by love interest number 1. This is Estrid. Some believe she will turn out to be Isildur's wife, but I don't know about that. From what I was able to find, we don't actually know his wife's name. There's not much on her in the books, so I can't say I'd be surprised if they work it in that this is Aragorn's great to the nth power grandma. But boy, does she have some secrets. She's got the brand of Adar, which means she's sworn loyalty to him. I'm sure that won't bite Isildur in the ass later on. Estrid, Isildur, and Magic Horse are attacked by Adar's men. Not Legolas shows up and saves them, but the Magic Horse gets taken by survivors. They go with Arondir back to the funeral for Bronwyn. Remember Bronwyn from season 1? Yeah, the actress couldn't come back for season 2, so they killed her off here. But that's okay, because Theo is still around. Remember Theo?
The kid who sounds like he's been smoking cigarettes since he was 6 years old.
You could see by this episode how they have to go back to all the other characters. They neglected the first 2 episodes. The reality of the show is that if we're not focusing on Sauron, it's not even worth the time. We're gonna talk about the Númenóreans in a bit. This show is the worst iteration of Númenóreans of all time. This is supposed to be men at their best. They're basically superheroes, and we get boring, predictable, unoriginal political intrigue from these weak, limp men. I can't stand it, and I'm not going to waste much time on it. So let's just get through it. The Númenóreans arrive back in Númenor. The king is dead. Pharazôn wants the throne. Miriel is still blind. They do a coronation. Isildur's sister has taken the Palantir and reveals it to the court. An eagle shows up for some reason, and Pharazôn strikes a pose by the eagle, which leads to the court chanting Pharazôn's name. That's it. That's all that matters. The Númenóreans in this show suck. Back to Sauron and Celebrimbor. At the end of the last episode, they sent to summon the dwarves of Moria to come to Eregion so they could make them rings. Ta-da! They're already here, with Durin the Younger and Disa already traveled to Eregion. This show is truly awful at demonstrating time and the passage of it. Anyway, Celebrimbor and Annatar want to give Durin the Younger rings to help them solve their mountain lighting problem. Durin the Younger is skeptical because he doesn't recognize Annatar, but Disa is on board out of desperation to save the mountain. Back at the mountain, the dwarves are going to run out of food with no sunlight coming through, and they cannot grow more crops. Durin the Younger and Durin the King seemingly make up, but of course this is temporary, and before the ring corrupts Durin the King. The episode resolves with Celebrimbor and Annatar forging the rings for the dwarves with the mithril that Durin the Younger brings to the elves. The show does not seem to be getting much better. I wish these episodes were 30 minutes apiece. There's still no need for them to be this long. My friends, I want to thank you for joining me for this Pondering Rings of Power special. If you would please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and if you didn't like the video, I don't really care. This show is really miserable to sit through, and I'm having a rough time getting through it. But I'm doing it for content reasons. Anyway, until next time, create, innovate, inspire. May the Force be with you. And for the love of God, cancel Disney+. Ta-ta.